Hello everyone, my name is LaPrecious and welcome to my channel. Let's talk with LaPrecious. So today I'm going to do a review on the Bobby DeBarge story. Let me tell y'all, I'm going to be honest, when I first heard this movie was coming out, I did not want to watch it. Now I love DeBarge and I love Switch. And I love Switch because of Bobby. But I just knew that from knowing their musical background as well as their family background, I knew that that movie was going to be filled with Bobby being on drugs, Bobby being abusive, the family resentment between he and his siblings, he and his mama, he and his daddy, the record labels not wanting to put up with him anymore, and just a lot of things that went on. So in the beginning of the movie, it started out with Bobby being in the hospital. And to those of you who don't know Bobby's story, I'll give you a rundown. So I just pretty much talked through the whole movie. Bobby DeBarge was the oldest out of 10 kids. The DeBarge family was made of 10 children. And I believe only 7 of them became famous because you had Bobby, Tommy, who were in Switch. Then you had Randy, Elle, Bunny, James, and there was another brother that was in the group as well. And then after DeBarge, you had Chico, and I think maybe 1 or 2 other brothers that became famous after Chico. So that's pretty much the musical makeup of DeBarge. You had Bobby and Tommy and Switch. Then you had James and Bunny and Randy and Elle and the other sibling in the DeBarge group who did the songs You Wear It Well, I Like It, Rhythm of the Night, A Dream, all those songs we love them for, they made up that group. Chico and the other ones, they came after. So, in the beginning of the movie, we see Bobby dying of AIDS. Bobby did die of HIV/AIDS back in 1995, supposedly from sharing needles, but they didn't show in the movie that Bobby was bisexual. I know it's a big debate about gay people catching AIDS more than heterosexuals, but it's a known fact that at that time, especially in the 80s and early 90s, if you was black and gay and out there having sex, AIDS just got your butt. I mean, it just really did. Because there were a lot of prominent black gay men that was, out there being, you know, out there living in their sexuality, and they caught AIDS and they died. And so Bobby, they never confirmed it, nor did they ever deny it. And I've always heard that Bobby did catch HIV and AIDS from sharing needles during drug use, but I just feel like due to him being bisexual and using drugs, there could have been a combo in that AIDS diagnosis. I mean, it just could have, because Bobby was bisexual because his daddy sexually abused him, and they left that out in the movie. But if you watch the Switch unsung episode, they do mention that Bobby was molested by his father, and even Tommy, who wrote a book because of the Barge family as their way of therapy, because Bobby wasn't the only one that went through it. They all went through it because their daddy was mean as the devil. Their daddy was pretty much the devil to them. And the movie made it seem like Bobby was the only one coping with it as bad as he was, but they all went through it. Bunny got on drugs, James got on drugs, Elle got on drugs, who was like the next star of the family after Bobby, and who a lot of people compared him to Bobby because when Elle was singing in the Barge and even his solo career, he would always say everybody said he sounded like Bobby, and he did. When you hear Elle singing a lot of his songs and doing a lot of his runs and harmonies, you hear Bobby all through that. I mean, you just do. But they all went through it when it came to the drugs and the sex and, the failed relationships and stuff. So Bobby wasn't the only one that went through it. Moving along, we did see his relationship with Latoya Jackson, because at the time they compared the Barges to the Jacksons, and the Jacksons did have a relationship with the Jacksons because Bobby was in a relationship with Latoya because the song I Call Your Name, which is a famous song from Switch, was about Latoya. And he and Latoya did date, and they did break up because Bobby, was getting too wild. And the Jacksons, they didn't want nothing to do with that. And the eerie connection that the Jacksons and the DeBarges had was that they both came from abusive upbringings. Because we all know Joe beat the crap out of them when they was growing up, especially when it came down to Michael. And even with the DeBarges, their daddy beat the crap out of them too, and the mama. So I believe that due to them having that big musical family and that Motown sound that everybody was checking for back then, I think that's what brought the Jacksons and the DeBarges together, and that's why they did have relationships with each other. And so moving along from, the movie opened up with Bobby dying from AIDS and then seeing the breakup of Switch. Now, one thing I can say, even though this movie did make Bobby look really bad, I'm going to just be honest, it made Bobby look bad. Everything that happened in this movie, it was accurate and it was on point because I don't know why they didn't do this last night, but Sunday, if you look at the lineup on TV1, they're playing the DeBarge Unsung and the Switch Unsung episodes. So to those of you who haven't seen it, if you watch those two episodes and then watch the movie, everything that was detailed in those two episodes was played out in the movie. So it's pretty much a repeat of what we already know from either reading the books from Bunny and the Mama and Tommy and watching the unsung episodes. And then moving along from Bobby and Latoya, and then it went into, the breakup of Switch and how Bobby's excessive drug use and him coming late and not showing up on time was really interfering with the group. And we also saw how Bobby's popularity was starting to go up because Bobby, even though he, was on drugs or whatever, he had a gift. He had that it factor. And I'm gonna be honest, the reason why Switch was so well known was because of Bobby. I Call Your Name and They'll Never Be. I mean, the DeBarges, whether it was in Switch or as a group, their songs are the most sampled songs in hip hop. Everybody used the dun 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 dun. Dun. I mean, you hear it excessively in a lot of hip hop songs, and that came from DeBarge. And I mean, the Switch dudes that wasn't DeBarges, they may have felt some kind of way, but I mean, Bobby and Tommy and Elle and Bunny, they made it work, and everybody loved them for it. So that was just a gift that Bobby had, and they saw it. But even though Bobby felt the way that he did about his family treating him the way that they did, he was his own worst enemy, and he really killed himself musically and physically. Because I believe that if Bobby would have had more people around him that cared for him, including his siblings, he would have turned out better. Because what I saw in Bobby was a man who was very gifted, very talented, very handsome. I mean, the Barges, they weren't just known for their sound; they was known for their looks because they did look good. The DeBarge man was very handsome and good looking, but it just seemed like Bobby would have lived a lot longer than he did if he had somebody telling him that you need help, you need counseling. And that was a question that I've had for a really long time about the DeBarges. I'm like, didn't nobody ever sit y'all down and say y'all need to go to family counseling about this stuff and to talk these things out and to talk these things through and to see where all this is coming from, and maybe if you could find some healthier outlets other than drugs and sex and all of this stuff that you're doing. And I think that due to the DeBarges coming from a poor black background, I'm just go ahead and say it. And that was another thing that I hated in the movie too, was I hate how we as black people, we have that narrative of being church grown, homegrown in religion, and we go through so much abuse and mistreatment and appropriation, and everybody wants to gloss it over with the love of God. You got to forgive, you got to praise God, God will make a way. and it pushed through, and the mama was just preaching that, and Bobby was like, well, where was God at when Daddy was beating my tail and beating yours? I mean, and the thing I could say that I did like about Bobby's spirit, from what I've heard in the movie and the unsung episodes, was that he was a true man. I mean, he was a proud black man, and he told it like it was. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't skip a beat or nothing. He just stuck it to you. If you liked it, you liked it. You didn't, you didn't. And that's what I could say I did like about Bobby, was that he was blunt and that he was honest. So I did like that. Another thing that they went into in the movie was Bobby getting his record deal, and then after that, he brought his siblings in, and we saw the development of the DeBarge group. And then we also saw how when James had came into the group, the reason why James didn't come in originally is because Jay wanted James to finish up high school, because a couple of the siblings didn't finish high school. I don't think Elle finished high school, and a lot of people don't know Elle has 12 children, because their mama, she had 10, but counting all the grandkids that the kids had, including Bobby's two sons he had when he was alive, she has 53 grandchildren. And L, I think he might have been the only sibling that had the most, but yeah, he had 12. He started having children when he was in high school, and I'm not sure if he even finished high school. But I think he and a few other siblings didn't finish high school, and they said they didn't want that for James, so they wanted him to go ahead and finish. And then he joined the DeBarge group. And then we saw how when he met Latoya and Janet, he fell in love with Janet, and they started dating. And to the DeBarge fans, we know that when he and Janet got together, that was the talk of the town. And then we saw the scene where after they had performed, Bobby had came and spoke to James about what had happened, and they kind of had their heart to heart moment. And then, James got into the car and told Janet, let's get married or whatever. And they did get married, but they didn't include that James and Janet got an annulment. Now, the James explanation in that unsung episode, Joe had a lot to do with that. But I also feel that the DeBarges, even though they had that sound and that Star Stella look, they were known as crackheads in the industry. I mean, they just were. Everybody knew they was on drugs. They stayed high. They was, hurting kids like Bonnie, like Bunny. I said Bonnie, like Bunny had stated, and they were, because that trauma of the abuse that their dad did had really did a number on them. And I've just never seen how trauma could just plague a family like that, where more than 5 siblings was plagued with drug addiction, drug abuse, in and out of jail for the possession of drugs. And it's just, it was just really sad. And from watching the movie the way that Bobby was, and I'm going to conclude my thoughts on Bobby once I say this, is that I really wish that Bobby would have loved himself enough to forgive his mom and his dad and his siblings for himself, so that he could have been at peace with himself. But I really do wish that somebody was there for him to walk him out of that, walk him away from the drugs and the abusive past, and his siblings in denial, and the mothers in denial, and even the fathers, in denial of what had happened. And if he would have just focused on himself, and just once he got that record deal, he would have just used it to his advantage, went from Switch to being Bobby, DeBarge, and being this star stellar man, and really would have been an example to his siblings like he wanted to, because I believe Bobby really wanted to be there for all of his siblings, which he was. And it was kind of sad that his siblings weren't there for him when he was going through drugs and dealing with his hurt and his pain, and how he had to fight and defend them and stick up to their daddy when the daddy was abusing them and hurting them, and the siblings was just acting as if that was just something of the past that he needed to let go of and not remember and not even reflect on. But it's like, it's like our dad, who claimed to love us and be there for us, he beat the crap out of us and was even raping us on top of that because they left that part out. Because in the movie they just showed him, and we all know what happened when he took Bunny up there in that attic. We know good well he raped and molested her when they went up there in that attic, and Bobby knew it, and the other ones and the other siblings they knew it too. But he didn't just do it to Bunny, but he did it to the boys too. And I just feel like if Bobby would have just focused on himself and healed himself and really got himself together and got off those drugs and really would have come up the success ladder like his siblings were, he would have lived and he wouldn't have ended up dead. Because I find it really sad how he destroyed so much of his life, and in the end when he wanted to get back out there and put out an album, he was dying. And I mean, he was able to complete an album because Bobby did release an album. It was released after he died. He was able to complete an album, and once he died, he released his solo album. So, at least before he died, he did get something out of himself that he wanted to do before he went down that destructive path. Moving along to his parents and his siblings, I really do blame his mama and his daddy for what they did. The mama, she said in the DeBarge episode of Unsung, she tried leaving, but came back because she was like, who's going to take me with all these kids? Because she had 10 kids by the man. I don't know why. And that just don't make sense to me how some women, they know these men are not any good. And they just stick and stay having babies with these men. I'm like, every baby you have, it's just like, and I didn't even like how they even looked as kids because this may sound offensive, but to me, they look like kids that worked out on the field somewhere. I mean, it's just like you got all these kids, their hair not looking kept up, they're wearing worn down clothes that they've been playing out in the yard and in the field all day. Then you got this big white man coming in like he the master or something. And I just didn't like how they made that look. I felt like they could have made them look a lot better. Even though they were poor, because it did say that they didn't come from money. They came from Grand Rapids, Michigan, which back then, according to their details, was the ghetto where they lived at. But I mean, you got people who live in the hood and the ghetto, and they still dress. They still dress proper. So I just feel like they could have made the kids look a lot better. So but I mean, I do blame the mama. And the mama, was a holy roller. God this, God that. Jesus make a way. Jesus gonna keep us and stuff. And that's the thing I hate about Christianity. And I'm going to say, and a lot of black people have voiced this opinion too. When you read the Bible, there were a lot of people in the Bible that did do some shyster stuff, and God didn't do too much about it. And I hate to say it that even in life, sometimes there's a lot of shyster stuff that goes on, and God won't do nothing about it. But I feel like in an instance where you have the choice to stop stuff and to stop abuse and to stop rape and to stop trauma and whatnot, you need to take that choice. God is not going to do everything where He's going to reach down out the sky and lift people up and toss them in the trash just so you can be relieved of the abuse. But you have to make the choice. And I felt like the mama, she could have been strategic in that. She could have went out and got a job, saved up and got some money, and could have just hauled them kids up out of there. I mean, think of some abuse prevention strategies. Because, I mean, you stayed with this man all these years and he raped your children. He beat your children. He even beat the mama in. Because they was even saying that the daddy lost multiple jobs because when they found out he was married to a black woman, they would fire him and he would come home and beat her up for that. And my thing is, and this may sound offensive, but I mean, this is my channel. This is how I feel about it. But hold on a minute, y'all. Even though, like I was saying before, let me get my cushion back on my chair. But as I was mentioning before, the mama could have prevented that. And even when it comes down to this whole interracial thing, Why would you stay with a man that's pretty much punishing you for being black? And this is the issue I have with interracial dating sometimes. And before y'all beat me over the head about it, every relationship I've been in has been interracial. And I never stayed with a man who hated me or treated me indifferently for being black. And I felt like the mama may have had some self hate issues going on with her, because why would you keep staying in the house with a man who hates you for being black and blames your blackness for him not succeeding in life, and you keep having mixed kids by the man? I'm like, are you having these babies so they could somehow have a better life or a better opportunity than you did for being black? And I just feel like that's what it is. And and my attitude about interracial relationships sometimes is the fact that it's a win-win, but there's always some type of advantage for both parties in it. Because when a darker race marries with the lighter one, they get status, they get attention. You get that whiteness, and I feel like the whiter race, they get a fetish out of it, because this whole black women being loved by white men, Hispanic men, or whatever, a lot of times I feel it's a fetish. Y'all want to screw us because y'all want to see what it's like to have a black woman with a black butt and all them sexual attributes that we have. And you want to see how amazing or how wonderful it is to have a mixed black baby. And and that's just what I really see in that relationship with the mom and with the daddy. Now with the daddy, he was nothing but a low down dirty devil. That's just what he was. And the daddy actually died when the DeBarge episode came out, because they did say in the DeBarge episode, even in the movie, they didn't really deal too much with the daddy in their present life. But you can go on the internet and see pictures of the DeBarges with their dad in his later years. So some of the siblings, it seems they may not have suffered as much abuse as the other siblings did. And it seems as if even the ones that did experience that abuse, they said we're going to forgive them and respect them because that's our dad or whatever. I disagree with that. I know the Bible says honor thy mother and thy father, but I feel like you beat me up, you raped me, and you don't feel no type of way about that. When I become an adult and get out your house, it's bye bye to you. Like, I ain't talking, I ain't calling, nothing. You dead to me. Because I just don't see how children can just forgive a parent like that, that sat up there and raped you and beat you and just pretty much made you feel like you was nothing. I'm like, how can you love somebody like that? So I just feel like with them siblings, it was a lot of in denial that went on with them. And Bobby in the movie, he felt some type of way about that too, because it was like, this man beat me up and made me feel this kind of way. And it's like y'all choosing to love him and to call him y'all's daddy and all that. And I don't understand it either, how people can just let they know somebody treated them like that their whole life and they still want to love them and this, that, and the third. But and then another thing with the dad actually left, because Bunny did say in the DeBarge episode that the uncle had heard about what was going on and he beat the crap out of him. And they said the daddy had literally broke down in tears because somebody finally beat him down. And Bunny said that it was such a relief for them, because this man that had beat them up and raped them and was never punished for what he did. And they said once he left and got beat up, they said that was the end of all that abuse. But the scars were still there. And even with the dad, back to what I was saying about him dying, the dad did live on. Bobby died in 1995, but around the time the DeBarge Unsung episode came out, which was 9 years ago to be, no, it was actually 10 years ago, because the DeBarge was like the second episode of Unsung, because I think the first one was the Clark sisters. And so around that time, they did ask the dad to be a part of it, but he declined it. He said he didn't want to speak. And I think the dad actually died not too long ago. So yeah, their dad is dead. The mama is still living. I do know that she got remarried, but I'm not sure if she's still with that man. In the aftermath of everything that happened after their daddy, as I mentioned before, When Bobby got his deal, you had the DeBarges, and after DeBarge, Bunny got her deal, Elle got his deal, Chico got his deal. But it's like after the other siblings got it, Elle was supposed to be the next star, just like his brother Bobby. But unfortunately, that drug plague, it got to Elle too, because Elle started getting addicted to painkiller medicine. Then it was crack, and that crack, it really did a number on him, because in the 90s he was really at the peak of his career. But once he got hooked on those drugs, it just killed him. And I remember in like the late 2000s, he did put out some new music and said he was gonna get clean, and he released the album called Second Chance, which is the one I have, because the first single and the only single he put out with Faith Evans, which is really good. And I really wish it would have got more buzz than what it did. It was called Lay With You, and that song, it had that. Dun, 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 I just want to lay right here with you. It, had that DeBarge, that sound that everybody loved him for. And it was a pretty good song, and I could say Second Chance was a pretty good album. But unfortunately, not too long after the album came out, Elle became addicted to drugs again. In an unsung episode, I wish that the DeBarge episode unsung, that the siblings would have stayed clean off of drugs like they were in there. But if you look up a Dr. Oz episode of the DeBarges from like 2011 or 12, Bunny, Randy, and James are all on there. And I'm telling you, they look bad. They looked like crippled old people. Those drugs had just riddled them up so bad. Bunny's daughter was on there saying how one time Bunny fought her because she was trying to get to a dealer to get that crack and stuff like that. And I mean, and that's the thing I hate about this movie, was that they made Bobby look like, oh, I'm hurting, oh, I'm mad, and oh, look at what Daddy did to me, and this is why I'm so angry and I'm on drugs. But they left out how James got hooked on drugs so bad they put him in a halfway house in Los Angeles, and that's why nobody has really seen or heard anything from him since that unsung episode. Elle is still performing and doing shows. I hope he's staying clean. Bunny, when you go on her Twitter page, you see nothing but Bible verses about Jesus and God. So maybe she's involved back with the church again. I know one of the DeBarge brothers has a YouTube channel. One of their grandsons, one of the DeBarges, not grandson, he might be a grandson, or he might be a grandson or a son. Well, he got to be a son. And he was actually the one who sung in the DeBarge episode when they were talking about the next generation. He was the one that had the guitar and stuff, and I think he might have been L's son. Yeah, I think he might have been L's son or one of the brother's sons from DeBarge. He has a YouTube channel with his wife, and they actually just had a baby. And I know Randy, hopefully he stayed clean. I do know that Tommy, he got hooked on drugs too. And then I do know that the drug abuse with them, it did come from Bobby, because I did see, in the movie where Bobby packed up all those crack cakes on Chico, and when Chico came out the airport, they called him and nabbed him, put him in jail, and they put Bobby in jail too. And the based off of what I've read about the DeBarges in this story, and based off of the unsungs and the books and stuff that I've read, the drugs, it did come from them trying to cope with that trauma of the abuse. And some of that influence came from Bobby, because they said whatever Bobby did, they wanted to do that. They wanted to be that. They wanted to have that. And even with the scene between Bobby and James, it was heartbreaking, because they were such a close family, and so much abuse that went on that it really tore them apart instead of bringing them together. And it was true that Bobby did abuse James, because James said in that scene, "You tormented me my whole life. You humiliated me. You bullied me." And he said, you knew better. He said, you can't blame me on the fact we was kids. He was like, you knew you abused me. And, and that's another thing I like about this movie is the authenticity, because everything that was said in the movie, it was true. The fans know it. The family knew it. And I mean, there was just a lot. I would like to know how was this movie made, and if the family even approved of it, because I feel like they pretty much just took the DeBarge and the Switch Unsung episodes and just made a movie out of it. But they erased like the Switch days, the DeBarge days, and took pieces of the DeBarge's heydays and just stuck with Bobby's abusive era up until he died. And I just don't see how the family could have even seen the script, seen how this movie was going to play out, or even approve of it. Because I remember that when the Switch episode came out, I don't know what happened or what was said, but Bunny on her Facebook page, she went off. She said Bobby was the one that started this thing. Bobby was the voice of Switch. If there wasn't Bobby, there would be no Switch. There would be no DeBarge. Y'all need to put some respect on his name and stop trying to discredit him for what he did, because Bobby was the one that started it all. And I mean, for her to say all of that, somebody had to say something. But I think what might have happened, I did hear something in that Switch Unsung episode from one of the members, and I could see how Bunny got triggered by that. So I think it was a comment that somebody made in the Switch episode that kind of ticked her off and made her pop off like that on Facebook. But I want to say overall with the movie, the acting, I will say the acting was on point. They were believable. It was as if the DeBarges was acting themselves. The makeup could have been a lot better. It could have. We all know that the barges was light, was light white, whatever you want to call it. We all know they was light, and they had the pretty silky long hair, pretty curly hair and stuff. But that makeup, they should have used Fenty. I go ahead and say that. She makes all shades for all skin tones and complexions. And I feel like instead of them using baby powders to make them look whiter than what they were, they should have just used regular foundation to allude to their natural skin tone. And I mean, at least they did hire actors that had the exact complexion as the DeBarges. So I'll give them that credit. But I felt like that makeup should have been more believable, and it should have been toned down a little bit. The hair. The hair could have been a whole lot better as well. Bobby, he did have that silky, he had that silky curly hair, because they left this part in the movie, but when you watch the Switch episodes, they show Bobby, in his younger years, and he did have long, wavy hair. But as he got older, they probably put some more sheen and pomade and stuff and poofed it out, gave him a fro. In his Switch days, Bobby had a fro. And the actor had on some old droopy mop that was like half fro, half a asymmetrical curly bob. And I'm like, y'all could have did away with that. Could have had a better wig on. And I mean, as many lace front wig artists we have out now on Instagram, YouTube, and in Hollywood, they could have found somebody to fix their hair a lot better. With the DeBarges, I want to say their hair looked better than Bobby was. And I find that so disrespectful, because I'm like, y'all already made this man look horrible as it is. And then y'all giving him hair, and y'all making the siblings' hair and stuff look better. Like, Then even with James now, James was played by a singer. I don't remember his name. I actually knew about him way before this DeBarge movie, because I remember when not MTV, when BET Her used to be centric, they used to do a lot of like behind the scenes or upcoming artist specials. And I remember they did one on him, because his stuff started coming out back in like 2013, 14-ish and stuff. And that was back when he had that little curl to the side, And so I remember him from those days. And I felt like he really played James' part to the T. I felt like he had his look, he had his voice, and he was a really good actor in this movie. So I felt like they did a really good job picking him to play James. As far as his hair and makeup, the makeup was on point, but I felt like the lace front should have been less visible. Everybody know that was a lace front he had, and I felt like around the edges where that lace was, they could have used a better quality lace front wig than what they use. I don't know what it is about these biopics sometimes, because even in the Victoria Gotti biopic, her hair looked a hot mess. And I'm like, why do y'all make these movies with such pride and gusto and y'all make the people look so bad? I'm like, fix the makeup, fix the hair, like do it right. I feel like if you don't do a movie and put this stuff out there and you want all this praise and fame and stuff, do it right wholeheartedly and not halfway. So I pretty much touched on Bobby. I pretty much touched on the DeBarge family and the siblings and pretty much the parents, but my overall feeling about the movie was I didn't like it. I did not like it because I believed it made Bobby look bad. It made it. I feel like it's gonna make people remember him in his worst stages and in his better stages. And I just really feel like it, instead of it maintaining his legacy as a true DeBarge and as the first DeBarge that branched out and got this music thing going, it just really made him look like this pitiful black sheep of the family that was just so helpless and so pitiful and just so like lowly. And I just really hate how they made him look. I mean, I've seen the red carpet premiere of this movie, and the people who came out to see it, people who came out to watch it, and I even saw some of the DeBarge family members come out for it. And I just don't see how they could have approved of a movie like that. It may have been accurate and on point, but I just felt like it was just so negative. They could have included his birth. They could have included some scenes of them singing in the kitchen or singing around the house and writing music and writing songs. They could have showed how Switch came up, the heydays, the albums they put out, and they could have went into like the TV shows and the interviews that the DeBarges did, Rhythm of the Night, how they ended up being included in the movie and it's one of the most known songs of the DeBarges, other than "You Were Well," "Who's Holding Donna Now," and "I Like It," and all the other songs they came out with. So it's like, why did y'all do that? And I really hate to say this, but this is why when it comes to black movies, especially black TV movies, I just can't stomach them no more because I'm sick of them having that same narrative, abusive upbringing. My mama did this, my daddy did that. I'm holding on to a dream. I've made it. I'm the star, but I got this bad, bad heap of bad luck raining over my head or always on my back. I gotta push through and then I gotta paint Jesus all over it and say God will make a way in order for it to get better. So that's just how I feel about the movie. So don't forget to like and leave a comment in the comment section. And you guys tell me what y'all thought of this movie. Because when I went on TV One's Facebook page and they posted the movie and stuff, a lot of the reviews on there said the exact same thing that I did. It was horrible, it was bad, and it really made Bobby's image a lot worse instead of better.